Welcome back, grade 10s. Today we're going to look at factoring trinomials where a is not equal to 1. But before we start, let's review a little bit of some of the questions that we did yesterday. So something like x squared plus 4x plus 9. We're looking for two numbers that have a product of 9 and a sum of 4. So we make a list of all the products of 9, or all the factors of 9. So 1 times 9, 3 times 3. I could go 9 times 1, but that's the same thing as 1 times 9. So then I take those numbers and I add them. So 1 and 9 is 10, 3 and 3 is 6, looking for something that adds to 4. If I can't find a sum of 4, then that means the trinomial cannot be factored. Let's take a look at another one. So we've got x squared plus 3xy minus 18y squared. Note that this is still like yesterday, where a is still 1, so we try the same technique. We can go straight to brackets. Well, first we find numbers that multiply to give negative 18 and add to 3. So they have a product of negative 18 and a sum of 3. Negative 1 and 18, negative 2 and 9, negative 3 and 6. Negative 6 and 3, negative 9 and 2, negative 18 and 1. I have to list all the possibilities when my product is negative. Then I'm looking for something that has a sum of 3. Boom, we find it. We've got negative 3 and 6 are the two numbers. So we can go straight to sets of brackets. My factors start with x because x times x is equal to x squared. The numbers inside are going to be negative 3 and positive 6. But we need to have a way to make up that 3xy and the 18y squared. So we can just plug in the y there. Just to show that that works, let's check our work. So we'll expand using the distributive property. We'll FOIL, as we say. We combine our like terms, and look at that. We've got the same thing that we started with. Now remember, your solution, your answer, the factors are just that set of brackets. Okay, so no need to go any farther past that. Now let's try another couple. So we've got x squared plus 7x plus 10, and r squared minus 10rs plus 9s squared. And I really encourage you to pause this and do these on your own. Right, hopefully you did these on your own. Welcome back. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to give 10 and add to give 7. It's that easy. You're done. Okay, 2 and 5, x plus 2, x plus 5. Next one, same idea. Two numbers that have a product of 9 and a sum of negative 10. So we go r negative 1 and 9, negative 9, so r minus 1s and r minus 9s. The s's make up that s squared term at the end. So now let's take a look at some where a is not equal to 1. And we'll start with 3x squared plus 8x plus 4. First thing to do always when you're factoring is to look for a greatest common factor. And in this case there isn't one. Well, there is, it's 1. So if there is no greatest common factor, we look for two numbers that have a product of whatever the first times the last is. So if the number in front of the x squared is not 1, so in this case it's 3, and it's not a greatest common factor, so what we do is we look for two numbers that multiply to give whatever the first times the last is, whatever a times c is. In this case, whatever 12, or 3 times 4 is 12. So two numbers that have a product of 12 and a sum of the middle term, like before, a sum of 8. So two numbers have a product of 12 and a sum of 8. We find those numbers, 6 and 2, and we use them to break up the middle term. So we get 3x squared plus 2x plus 6x plus 4. So we're breaking up, I just rewrote that first trinomial there, and then we're breaking up that middle term with the 2 and the 6 to get 3x squared plus 2x plus 6x plus 4. Then we go ahead and factor by grouping. If you take a look at the first two terms, they have a common factor of x, so we pull that out and we're left with 3x plus 2. We must know that the second bracket's going to be the same, and we ask what do we multiply 3x by to get 6x? It has to be a 2. My common factor, 3x plus 2, the leftover bits, x plus 2. The next one has one of those sort of mixed up middle terms again, 6x squared minus 5xy plus y squared. No greatest common factor, so we look for two numbers that have a product of the first and the last. In this case, that's a product of 6 and a sum of negative 5. If the product is positive but the sum is negative, means both numbers must be negative. In this case, negative 2 and negative 3. We use that to break up the middle term. Factor by grouping. We pull out the common factor from the first two. We recognize that 3x minus y is common to both sides, so we write it once out in front, and the leftover bits make up my other factor, 2x minus y. 3x squared plus 2x plus 4 works the same way. No greatest common factor, so I look for two numbers that multiply to give positive 12 and add to give 2. If they add up to give a positive, we're just looking for two positive numbers. And if we add all of those pairs up, we get 13, 8, and 7. No sum of 2, that means we can't factor it. Okay, so it can't be factored. 24x squared minus 30x minus 9. Next question. Greatest common factor? Yes, this time. So we pull out the 3 and put the trinomial in a set of brackets. Then we treat it like before. Two numbers that multiply to give whatever 8 times negative 3 is, and add to give whatever negative 10 is. We can use that negative 12 and the 2 to break up the middle term, the negative 10x, and then factor by grouping as before. The 3 stays out in front. I use a big square bracket because there's going to be some round brackets inside. 2x minus 3 is common, 4x plus 1 are my leftover bits, and I make up my other factor with them. So again, here's 3 practice questions. I'd encourage you to work through them on your own, even if you did them in class today. Pause the machine once you see the last bit written, and then come back in a few minutes when you're done. So we look for a greatest common factor. Welcome back. Two numbers that multiply to equal negative 8, add to equal 7. Making a list here, so negative 1 and 8, that has a product of negative 8 and a sum of 7. Break up the middle term, factor by grouping. Notice that the brackets need to be the same, and the leftover bits make up my second factor. In this case, I pull out a negative 3. Looking for two numbers that multiply to give 10 and add to give 17. Those don't exist. So we're done, right? There are no other factors. There are no numbers that multiply to give 10 and add to give 17. So the factors are negative 3 and s squared plus 17s plus 10. In the last one, the product is 6, the sum is 7, so the numbers are 1 and 6. I break up the middle term. Factor by grouping again. So in this case, y is common. That leaves us with 2y plus 1x that I write a second time. I fill in the empty space with the 3x because 3x times 2y is 6xy. And I make up my factors. Now the last question is from page 231, example 3. Talking about the Devil's Cauldron, a hole in Banff Springs Golf Course. And in that question, as they phrase it, they give a formula that determines the height of the golf ball at any given time after it's been hit. The formula for that is negative 5t squared plus 25t plus 30, where h is the height of the ball in meters and t is the time in seconds after it's hit. So the first part says to factor, to rewrite the formula in factored form. So notice that there's a greatest common factor, so we pulled out the negative 5. So that means h, the height, will be equal to negative 5 times. If we factor it out here, we get t minus 6 and t plus 1. Second part, it says find the height of the ball after 2.5 seconds. Well, since t is time in seconds, we can replace the t with that 2.5. So we end up with negative 5 times 2.5 minus 6 and 2.5 plus 1, or negative 3.5 and positive 3.5. And when we multiply that out, we get positive 61.25 meters, not seconds. So the height of the golf ball after 2.5 seconds is 61.25 meters. Okay, hopefully the video helps. See you tomorrow.